Welcome back to part two of the mostly mundane adventures of Jim. Thank you for joining me. A new doorbell. Lowell Deckard, Daddy, had just installed a modern contraption next to the door of our white frame house on 7th Street in Mitchell. There was a small rectangular box with a round button in the middle. When you pushed the round button with your finger, you could hear a pleasant ding dong, and magically my mommy, Martha, would appear at the door and ask what she could do for you. How wonderful! Need a glass of water? A cookie? A Band-Aid? Just press that button. Well, she didn't keep coming because we were all taking turns with the magic ding-dong button. Alan, Bill, David, Susan, and 3-year-old Jim. The amazing thing about our mom was that she never seemed to lose patience with us and never yelled at us. We were excited about that doorbell for a couple of hours, and then Aunt Carolyn Bishop showed up with some cardboard boxes. My marvelous mommy. Cardboard boxes. Yes, sirree. Aunt Carolyn knew how to entertain kids. Don't waste money on toys. Just swing by the local appliance store or grocery. Throw some free boxes in the car and dump them off in the front yard of your favorite nephews and nieces. Now sit back, sip some lemonade, and watch as a kid's imagination goes to work. A ship on the high seas, a jalopy of our very own that we could drive. If it was a refrigerator box, it could be our house and we could invite our neighbors over. Or maybe we could be the first ones in space in our rocket ship. Astronaut Virgil Grissom was from our town. Who knows, his first spacecraft might have been a humble, but very wonderful, cardboard box. The brick farmhouse. It had a long gravel lane with scrubby weeds growing along the center of the drive. We had moved to the country into a large 2-story red brick farmhouse surrounded by a root cellar, woodshed, chicken house, 2 large barns, and a two-hole outhouse. Imagine. It was perfect for a family of 7. No waiting in line. The house was built around 1850, so it was already 100 plus years old when we moved in 1953. We had 40 acres, and when Dad went out to tend to our animals, he'd announce that if anyone needed him, he would be out on the back 40. I suppose that made him feel richer than someone with a mere hobby farm. The soil was mostly red clay, but we had patches of richer soil for growing vegetables. The house was built with 12-inch thick brick walls made from the clay on the back 40. The house is still standing strong today. The cattle, geese, sheep, and goats that grew up there were glad for the creek that wound its way through the property, and they were happy to have a man like my dad feeding them and checking up on them on a regular basis. Dad would always announce to us that he was going to throw the cows down out of the loft some hay. The creek was a great place for adventures. We fished off the bridge that crossed over the creek before turning into our lane. The water was 3 or 4 feet deep there. We had sunfish, catfish, and a few of our neighbors' goldfish that they'd won at the school carnival. They were hardy little rascals and grew into pretty fair-sized fish. We didn't have store-bought fishing tackle, but relied on a stick, a piece of string, a hex nut for a sinker, a small block of wood for a bobber, and for a hook, a bobby pin. Sometimes we would even use bait. I'm turning the page now, don't go away. Even with no bait, we would sometimes catch something. One time while fishing, a large snake crawled into a hole in the muddy bank. It had an interesting pattern on its back, and I decided it was a diamondback rattlesnake. So I ran for my life down the lane to the house shouting, "It's a diamondback rattlesnake." My brother David met me and quieted me down with a simple word of comfort. "It is not." Well, he was right. Our part of the state had no rattlers. We were blessed with the kind of poisonous snakes who give no warning for an impending strike, copperheads. Later in life, I would kill 2 of these reptiles with a preemptive strike using a garden tool. One of those times, the snake was wrapped loosely around a green bean plant where I was picking beans. I learned that there is a subtle warning issued by copperheads. They smell like cucumbers. But then I'm not in the habit of smelling snakes, so that wouldn't have helped me. In the winter, when the creek froze over, we could ice skate on it. We had no ice skates, but rubber boots worked just fine. We didn't need to impress anyone with a triple axle. One spring we had so much rain that the creek flooded and became a lake between our house and the Parks family. Their young son, Charlie Bob, waded and swam across this new lake almost up to our front door, just to visit. Stay tuned next Saturday to part 3. Thanks again for joining us.